Okay, so this is going to be a short screencast, just going through our network of games. So first thing, I'm just going to show a demo of one player, and then I'm going to go through the document of the bandwidth and how much players we can support, and then I'm just going to go through the code and say exactly what I did. So first thing first, we will load it up. So start the server, start the client, and then we will just wait until the box comes up. So our timer's a bit messed up, just kind of like Space War. And player 5 is not positioned anywhere, so he's just at the moment, so he's just positioned at the center screen. We just need to find a location for him at the moment. So I'm just going to put my IP address, just to make sure that's right. Okay. Default port number, and then the game should start when connected. So send request. So there we go. So you can't hear, but the music is actually playing. So what we have, we can move our player. So move around, this collision, and then place our bombs. And they can blow up. We have sounds, so everything's working quite nice. The only issue we have here is so we place a bomb on a box, and the box looks like it disappeared, but it actually hasn't, because they still keep drawing. So these boxes aren't actually here, so we can walk down, and same with the pickups. You pick them up, but they stay on the screen. So that's something we're gonna actually have to figure out what's causing that and why aren't they being set to invisible. So that's basically it. So got a good bit working in the time frame that we actually had. So the only extra changes there, we have to put the player scores on the screen. So I'm just going to stop this and stop the server, and then we're just going to quickly look at the document. So this is basically from our structs. So the data we need to send is the player data, the bomb data, the explosion data, and the blocks and the power up data. So for the blocks, we want them to actually, for other players, to turn them invisible, but for some reason that's not working. The same with the power ups. So if we look at the structs for each one, so we have create our struct, so this would be the data we're sending. So I just went here and calculated all this. So in total, the amount of bytes we'll be sending is 74. Now we could shorten this because we are sending a lot of ints and floats. We can shorten these ints to all shorts. That'll save some space, and we could change also floats. But due to time restraints, that's something we may fix afterwards after this, just to make it better. So if we take our calculation, so we want to convert it to bits. So we multiply by 8 by 5, which would be because we have 5 players going to be in the game, multiply by 30 FPS per second, and then that should be 74. 74 bits. So that equals the 762 bits per second. And in college we calculated the bandwidth to be somewhere between 17 megabytes per second. So if we divide that by how many bits per second, we get around 36.8. So roughly our game can support about 36 players. So that's not too bad. Okay. So I'm just going to go through the client first. So if we look at what we have to do. So we'll look at the player. So for the player, I create the structs. So these are the most important because these will determine our movement. So I changed the way the movement works in this. So if we go to player.cpp in the updates, so the player will only constantly keep moving if their state is walking. So this, like the way the code was, the walking and standing enums were not used. Now they are. So this is more efficient and easier to do, and it makes more sense. So it just checks the direction, and if they're walking, move them in that direction, and then animate them in the same way through. And if they're not doing anything, just set them to idle and them to be standing. So for the data, so for the networking thing, so we want to set the data. So we want to set the walk data, direction, and our current player state. And for our two pools, which is active and dead, so if all players are dead, the round will end. We just set these here. And for the get data is pretty much the same. So we just have our flags. In the structural block class, it's just an XY and a flag. The same with the power up. The bomb is slightly different. So the bomb has the fuse. So we need to get the fuse time. So when it ticks down, it will blow up. So we want to go into our main. So since we need 5 players, I set it up that we have 5 players. So I introduce 5 players. So let me just go down, show we initialize these. So I have put everything in arrays. So there's an array of players, an array of bombs, there's an array of explosions, and there was already an array of power-ups and blocks. But originally there was no array of players, which I don't know why there wasn't. There should have been. So we have for the explosions we have 3 types of arrays. So we actually have one for the mid and large explosion and small one, because it draws different ones depending on which one. So we need an array for each one instead of just adjusting the size. So for the player, we have several moving bits. So for the player to move, we have 5 bits for the controls. So we have a left bit, a right bit, a forward and a backwards bit, and a bomb place bit. So when the keys are pressed, these will be sent over like from the server. So I'll show that in the server. We'll find update. So if the player get button and forward bit, we want to set the state to be walking and set it to north. So we'll start moving, and we want to play a sound, the walk bit sound. And this is basically the same for the other movement. Slightly different for the place bit. So we want to call this the handle bombs function, which just handles bombs. It just plants the bombs. So basically it gets the bomb. If we go look at it, good. So it checks the ID of the player and then it plants the corresponding bomb depending on their ID. And so I changed the round start to be, we need to send the round start bit so we can start the game. So for our players, I also just set up their positions for their new positions, so they're all at the 4 corners. And this will be where we play our music. Let's see, I removed all the collision from the client. So collision. I'm going wrong thing. So we go to our collision class. So I removed all the collision, so all the collision is now handled in the server. So if we go to our server and we go to up to collision, which is somewhere here. I kept all the tile collision in a separate function because it's huge, and it's just the same for the entire thing. So it just goes through the array of players and just checks the position and does the collision for it the same way it does in the tile collision that we were given in class. So we need to bring up to the collision. So as you can see, all this complicated stuff, I'm going to delete it after this. This is basically the last version of it, and it's more of a condensed version and much easier to read because everything's like stored in an array, so it's pretty much handier. So what it wants to do for all the players, we want to just iterate through the array of players, and then we want to check to see if they collide with something else. So we'll use another for loop for player. So for the other players, if we want to check to see if they collide with another player, not themselves, because if they collide with themselves, they won't move. And I had that problem because it just keeps switching them back to their position, which is out of the map. And so we just iterate through, so we can't move. And then if we collide with a power up, we want it set to false, which doesn't seem to be working at the moment, but it's picking them up and it's playing the sound. And same with the block, we want to be setting them to false if the explosion hits them, but alas, it doesn't seem to be setting them. See, it's setting them the active to be like they're not active, but they're still visible. So that could be from seeing the sending the data. So if we like go into our and look at the actual data we're sending, so we're sending the player data, the bomb data, and the 3 explosion data, because we have one for mid and one for large. And so if I comment out this line, it turns all the blocks invisible, but still collidable. So I'm not too sure about why that is. So we can either have invisible blocks, or that will disappear when you play the game, or you can have visible blocks that don't disappear. So it looks nicer to have the visible blocks. That's something we're definitely going to have to fix if we have time. It's probably something simple. Anyway, so we just send the power up there. So the power up there is sending, and we are collecting the power ups. And so that's preparing the data for the client. So we want to see what the client is actually sending. So if we go down and see to our networking, so this is basically for the handle input. We want to check to see if what button state they're pressing. Actually, no, that's wrong. That's not what we use. If we go back to update. So here's what we have done. So if key down is just like the button state is we OR the bit all the way across, and then we update our player or our blocks and power ups. So I should get rid of all that comment stuff. So if we want, so for each player we want to basically check the power of their bombs. So this will determine what kind of bombs are exploding. So if their power is 1, the small ones will explode. The mid, if they're 2, the mid, and then 3 large. I think there's only one thing left to show, which is down here. Which is the networking code. So we want to look at, here we go. So this is basically all the info that we want to get from the server. So this is the thing, so this is similar to what we have here, except for it's the opposite. So we're setting the data instead of getting the data. So again, we're getting all this, and again, same reason, like if we set this, they're invisible, but they're still collidable, so they're still there. So anyway, that's about it. So thanks for watching.